Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fishin', the podcast where we're trying hard to suck less at Merfolk finance, and you're learning from our mistakes. My name is Kody. I'm one of the hosts of Fishin'. You can find me on Twitter as not Kody Smith on Twitter, and we also have Matt, who is the other host of the show. Matt, how are you doing?
I am doing great. I'm back in my normal position as number two.
You're not number two. We're equal. We're equal partners in this.
Ish. You do so much. I mean, and it's just reality. You do so much more on the show than I do. So I have no problem being the Ed McMahon to your original Tonight Show host, whose name is but I remember Ed McMahon, and that's all that matters. Johnny Carson. There we go.
I was gonna say, I was like, I think that's Johnny Carson. but no, you were here for your professional knowledge, and I did consult you a bit on this one because we're going to be talking about Merfolk finance in this episode. Is that correct?
Absolutely. This is something that we've been talking about doing for a while. We've alluded to Merfolk being a very cheap modern deck, but we've never gotten to the nuts and bolts of it. So we felt that it was about time to really talk some numbers. And right now, with Magic Finance being as weird as it's ever been since I've followed it, which I've been following Magic Finance for a long time. So it's an interesting time to follow.
Yeah, it's definitely something, like you said, we've been talking about doing for a while, and we're probably going to do on a semi-regular basis, touching on it a little bit here and there, just to kind of keep, you guys, our listeners, abreast of changes that are happening and, just different things, because there's lots of different ways you can save money on buying Magic cards. And let's be honest, Magic's not super cheap.
So, no. And one thing that was going on too was when we initially came up with the topic of doing Merfolk Magic Finance, it was supposed to be kind of a one shot, but then we started like brainstorming all the things we wanted to talk about, and all of a sudden we have like a 4-hour show going on. And then Kody went online and posted on Facebook and Twitter, and we got some responses from you guys of things you want us to talk about. And it's like, oh man, there's just so many like subtopics that we do want to hit. So we kind of broke it down, and we're going to talk kind of the 60,000 foot view today, but then I think we're going to really break into some subtopics about once a month, once every 6 weeks from here on out.
Yeah. So before we get further into discussing finance, we want to tell you that you can find us on the Apple Podcast Store, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts. On YouTube, you can find us on our YouTube channel.
Has the word radio?
There's lots of radios.
That movie Radio with Cuba Gooding Jr.? We're in that.
The Google Play Store, we're there. Please keep up with telling your friends about us. One thing that I noticed today has happened a couple times, but it makes me super happy, is when somebody finds our Twitter and subscribes on Twitter, and then immediately somebody with the same username subscribes to our YouTube channel. That makes me super happy. So if you guys can do that, remember to find us on YouTube. I'm still working on the custom URL. That's an ongoing thing. But we did get some really cool new ratings. This actually happened the same week that we got the first one, but it happened after we recorded. So we had a great comment from Spreading Those Seas on the Apple Podcast Store, I think is a appropriate username. It says, these guys talk about my favorite deck and tribe and my favorite game. This may be a very narrow topic, but they do an excellent job discussing all aspects of Merfolk. So thank you, Spreading Those Seas. Do you want to get the next one?
Sure. And one thing I think he gets, the thing I like about our reviews, especially because I mean it's good to get reviewed, to know how you're doing, and to know where you could do better. But it seems like a lot of the people who've been listening kind of get it. Yes, we're a Merfolk podcast, but we're not just that. We're not going to be so laser focused in a Merfolk. We're not going to be touching other major topics in Magic. So absolutely gets it. And then we had
a whole episode about Tron.
Yeah, exactly. So, we had a, review from, Johnny Rotten, um, of the Sex Pistols, which is fantastic. I mean, we have celebrities listening to our show now, which makes
I
me happy.
I didn't know he was still alive. Is he still alive?
Yeah, he's he's still alive. I think Sid Vicious is the one who died, Sid and Nancy? Is that right?
Sounds right. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
yeah. I'm sure Google will prove me wrong, but yeah.
Darn you, Google. But anyway, Mr. Rotten said, two guys chatting about Merfolk and other MTG topics. They clearly have good chemistry, and it shows in how well the show flows. Enjoyable weekly listen with a stiffness found in slot of other Magic podcasts. I think it's supposed to be in a lot, but they're slotty. There's some slotty other Magic podcasts out there.
Yeah, and I mean, we've known each other since I think like late 2014, I
Something like
think.
that. About 5 years, 5, 6 years, somewhere around
Yeah.
there.
So I mean, we've had plenty of long talks about Magic, and it was uh that's honestly why when I was kind of brainstorming this, one of the reasons why I thought that you would be a good co-host for this, because number one, who wants to just hear me just like ramble, like one of those Luke, out in the wilderness, like just randomly jabbering about the Force and whatnot. Like I don't want to be Ben Kenobi just talking to myself, in the deserts of Tatooine.
You
Um,
need R2D2.
yeah, I need somebody to talk to. But that was kind of part of it, was like, we have pretty similar beliefs about magic, and we can flow pretty well. So as we just put some microphones in front of us.
And one thing that I told Cody we had to do if I was going to do the show was I was not going to take it seriously. We were going to have fun with it. So we were going to have be a very free flowing. We were going to joke around. We weren't just going to be suit and tie, buddy holly, don't miss a note type things. I mean, we're going to make mistakes, but we're going to have fun too. It's a game.
Yeah, like Bayou is the most expensive blue dual land. That's that's definitely a thing that happens.
So that was an error that Cody made last week, which is funny because we are very hypercritical of what we say. So when we go back and we listen to it after we release, it's like, oh crud, I made that mistake. But fortunately, like me, I think I've noticed like 4 or 5 mistakes that I've made, just like little things. I think you've done the same, but no one's called us out yet. So
I
you
to-
guys should start calling us out.
I totally Donald Trumped Matt the other time, where he was like, "Did you say blue duels with Bayou?" And I said, "No, I didn't say that." So we've discussed it. Um,
Wrong,
Wrong.
wrong.
Your mistake is huge. To not put too much of a political spin on our show. Patreon. We're on Patreon, patreon.com/fishcastmtg. We've had two new patrons. Um, Actually, both are content creators, which was super cool. Um, the first one I want to talk about, also picked our random Merfolk this week. It's Orcs Head Jordan. So Orcs Head is a MTG content creating group based in the UK, and they have a great YouTube channel. They have gameplay videos for Arena and Moto, and they have unboxing videos. I watched a couple of their videos today. So Jordan, he came to me and he said, "Hey, I want to support the show," so he supported us, and we're gonna actually go into the next one, which has our first supporter at the River Herald's level, which is $10 a month, which is insane. Thank you so much to Russell L, who is at Rogue Artificer on Twitter. Oh, sorry. Um, Jordan is at Orcs Head Jordan on Twitter. And Russell L is at Rogue Artificer. He's a great member of our community. He hosts a podcast called Commander Clinic, which is a great podcast. I listen to it every episode that comes out. They come out like every 2 to 3 weeks. But what he does is he takes, people submit lists to him, like commander lists, and he upgrades them, and he has sections where he talks about the list as it is, and then he talks about upgrades, and he even has like, if you're going to like if you have an unlimited budget, here's some stuff that you should put in. It's a really great show. But so being at the River Herald's level means he gets his own episode.
I'm actually a little excited about this. So we'll have another guest on here in the next couple weeks. He gets to pick the topic, which we're assuming is going to be Commander, but he hasn't confirmed yet. So he might throw something completely random at us. But we're ready either way.
Yeah.
So
It'll be,
no matter what, it's gonna be fun.
it'll be really great to have him on the show. And I had Orcs Head Jordan pick the random Merfolk this week, so that on his episode he could pick. Maybe we could have him pick it live on the episode, and we can, just determine it on the go.
I'm totally down with that. I think that would make a lot of sense.
So with that out of the way, we're gonna go into the random Merfolk, which is random Merfolk number 129. So this one actually I was surprised about. I did not know this one existed, and I think I'm going to put it in Commander because I think this is actually a pretty cool one. So before I go into the actual card, I asked him, can you give me a number? And he gave me a number, and he said that this number is in relation to his favorite tribe, and the person that can guess what tribe that number is based off of, he said they deserve a prize. I don't know why you would get a specific tribe from this number, but he picked random Merfolk number 129. Do you want to read this one, or do you want me to read it? This one's a little complicated.
I'm writing down number 129 because I'm gonna figure out what tribe he's talking about, and I'm gonna win the prize.
I don't know what he meant. Like, do we have to give a prize? Do I have to give you a prize if you figure it out, Matt?
I just want a prize. I don't care what it is.
I'll give you a high five the next time I see you. That can be your prize if you figure it out.
You will have to drive down the next weekend to give me a high five, and then turn right back around and go home.
Sure.
Kody lives 16 hours away, by the way.
It's like 10 hours away. It's not that bad, but still probably not like something you would, you would drive on a regular basis. But go ahead.
So anyway, the card is called Sea Singer. It's 2 blue and 1 for a 0/1, and it has, if you control no islands, bury Sea Singer, which was actually a very common thing for aquatic creatures back in the early days of Magic. You may choose not to untap Sea Singer during your untap phase, and it has tap, gain control of target creature whose controller controls islands as long as you control Sea Singer, and Sea Singer remains tapped. So essentially, it's quintessential. Just steal your creature. Helm of Possession. Mono blue Helm Possession. It's great. You're gonna be playing things that are gonna turn their stuff into islands, and I mean we're talking commander, so most likely somebody's gonna have an island anyway. And you can steal their commander. You can steal their Jin Kataxis. I mean, it's a great card.
So this card was printed in 3 sets. It was printed on Masters Edition online, and it was also printed in 5th edition, which is the art I have in our notes. And it was also printed in Fallen Empires, which actually has some pretty crazy art.
Yeah, and I was actually talking to Kody off air about this. I actually think I pulled one of these from a Fallen Empires booster pack when I was a kid, because I have one that I know I've had probably for at least 20 years, and it's beat to hell. I mean, this thing is just pavement played, but I absolutely love it. And the art on all versions is actually really good.
I like the 5th edition art a little bit better, but I think the Fallen Empires and Masters art looks more like a Merfolk, like a traditional Merfolk in that sense. But I actually think I'm going to put this in Commander. I think this is a great card.
The Fallen Empire art has some epic belly button going on. So if you like epic belly buttons, you'll like the Fallen Empire art.
Yeah, that's definitely something. But I mean, this is something that we'd play, right? And like in Commander, in a Steal Your Things themed deck, like this is actually not terrible.
Yeah. No, I'm actually gonna put this in my belly button tribal deck.
Okay,
belly button tribal has to have a belly button showing.
Hey everybody, Zuby here to tell you about my Magic the Gathering podcast, Magic with Zuby. Magic Azubi is a podcast all about the Magic the Gathering card game. We talk about the latest news and events, the latest cards in decks. We bring on guests from pro players to content creators and more. Join me each week as we keep discovering why Magic the Gathering is the best card game around.
All right, so we're going to go into our main topic, which is discussing the, kind of, like you said, the 60,000 foot, bird's eye view of modern Merfolk. We're going to be primarily discussing cards that are in modern. So before we go super deep into this, I want you to know that we did some homework. So when we talk about deck prices, which we're going to go over a little bit of, some of the main decks in modern, comparable decks or tier 1 decks, if you will. And we got our deck prices from MTG Goldfish. That's a pretty common resource. A lot of people use that for meta games and especially on like Moto and stuff like that, where they have leagues and stuff. They report on those lists. So I think that's a pretty good source. And for individual card prices, we went through mtgstocks.com. So as of this recording date, which I believe is April 9th, Monday, April 9th, 2018. So when you hear this, it'll be Thursday. So just keep in mind those dates when you listen to this episode. That's kind of where we're pulling our prices from. That and TCG player market price.
Correct. That's the big thing right now is that everybody has their own pricing guides they like to use, whether it be TCG or Star City Games or MTG Goldfish or whatever. So there's going to be some variance. Usually, most of them are going to be fairly close to one another. The low, mid, high might be off, give or take. But yeah, MTG Goldfish is a pretty safe one to go with, and MTG stocks as well.
Yeah, so those are both resources that we both use. We both also use tappedout.net, which is also a good deck building website.
Correct.
I've started using MTG Goldfish a little bit more because I like the interface, but that's really neither here nor there. So we're we're talking about how where we got our prices, but Matt, we're talking about finance, and you're kind of my guy that you send me text when something big happens. You're my guy that keeps me updated. You're like my bookie for Magic. So how did you get into finance, and what do you do to keep up on MTG finance as a whole?
Okay, so I've been actually very much into MTG finance for quite a while, mostly because I want to buy more cards and I want to make sure that I can afford said cards. And over the course of my MTG life, my financial situation has changed quite drastically. Obviously, I was once upon a time a 7-year-old, then a high school kid with like a McDonald's job, a college kid, blah blah blah. I'm now in my mid 30s and I have a pretty decent salary from where I work as a data scientist.
You can't
But
see it. You can't see it. He looked into his webcam and his eyes got really big, like his eyes widened, and he said it to me like I didn't believe that his job was as a data scientist and not just a math nerd.
So anyway, that's the main reason why I follow finance. Plus, one of the things that's happened over the last so from probably about Khans of Tarkir and prior, MTG finance was actually fairly stable. Cards were printed, and very rarely were they reprinted. Maybe in a core set, when Commander started coming out, maybe in a Commander set, but more often than not, there weren't reprints. So there would be a very incremental increase of price over for about 20 years. But more recently, we've not been having buyouts. Then you have the buyouts coupled with the fact that Wizards is aggressively reprinting everything, which is tanking prices, especially on a lot of older cards that hadn't gotten reprints before but don't see much play. So you have the investors out there who are losing capital because their cards they've invested in are being reprinted and their demand has gone down. But so they're reinvesting their money into reserve list cards or premium cards, which will not lose value, which is making the market skyrocket on certain things and plummet on others. So over the last 5 years, I've been following a lot closer because I find it incredibly interesting. Also, I'm not a somebody who goes out and does buyouts. I'm not a someone who goes and looks for cards that are in standard sets or coming out and tries to buy like 500 of them to resell. I don't have time to sell small stuff. So if a card jumps by $1 or $2, but I have like 500 copies, I'm not going to take the time to make my money back on that. I don't have the time to do that. So the way I like to do my MTG finance is I'm kind of more of a whale, whereas I try to find more expensive stuff and I try to buy in low and then sell high. And right now, my new rule of thumb is I will not buy anything that is not reserve list or premium. So right now, only reserve list or premium cards are what I buy into. I will not buy anything that Wizards can reprint and chop me at my knees for.
And where do you get most of your MTG finance, information from?
So I use a lot of different websites. I check out MTG Goldfish. I do. I check TCG Player quite often. Usually every day at lunch, I just kind of do a quick scan through cards I'm prospecting that I think are going to be going up fairly soon. I listen to Rudy at Alpha Investments quite a bit. He's a goofy guy. He's got a great show if you're not watching him, but he's very intelligent. So it really a lot of it's my own just analysis of what's going on in the market.
Now, so one other thing that you touched on was reprints. And one thing that is important to keep an eye on while you're looking at these reprints is not only the cards that drop in price, but cards that aren't reprinted that skyrocket as the result of not having reprints. And to be honest, the first Modern Masters came out in 2014, and so these reprint sets are a relatively new phenomenon.
And that's one thing I want to make sure I'm crystal clear on is I'm very much pro reprint. I think reprints are great. I think the game it's a game and it should be played. So, but I'm also pro reserve list.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I kind of go back and forth on. So at least for me, I think I approach it a little bit differently than you do, Matt. My whole thing is like I want to make. I've recently, kind of like you, gotten into Legacy, and my big thing is I want to make Magic as cheap as possible. And as you know, I think that I have a similar viewpoint to what most people do, and it's that you should at least keep an eye on things to make, to help offset the cost of your hobby. So now I listen to podcasts like Brainstorm Brewery, and I watch YouTube channels like Booster Tutor, who I guess are kind of more on the casual end of MTG finance. But like Booster Tutor does collection buys, and I kind of live vicariously through that. So that's definitely something that I like to watch. And
It drives me nuts because I can never find good collections out there. Or
me
whenever I
neither.
see them on Craigslist, whenever I call up, they're already gone. It's like, "God, I can have it.
They're either already
Booster Tutor
gone.
can't meet again.
Yeah. No, like, and that's why I like watching his videos, because he kind of speeds through it a little bit. And the big thing is just to like that I do is a friend of mine, another Matt over here in Oklahoma, he
You're
calls me.
cheating on me with another Matt.
No,
There can be only one. I'm gonna Highlander that Matt. I'm gonna show up with my broadsword, and I'm gonna steal his power.
Well, I will warn him. But he
Traitor.
yeah, he's a Matt at my store, and he drafts a lot, and he calls me Stinky Pete because I every time a set comes out, I pick a card and I trade for as many copies of that card as that or a couple cards. So like Word of Invention, I ended up picking a bunch of those, and I ended up with like 50 or 75 of those. and I sold them with all the hype from
Lantern.
Lantern Control. And so like I'm looking to like, you know, maximize like I'm totally okay if it spikes. You know, if I bought them for 50 cents to $1 and I can sell them for, you know, 250, that's enough for me. Like I'll quick unload things. It's just about, you know, like that's what gets me off about Magic Finance. And so I picked Haptra Vizier of Poisons. I'm still collecting those if anyone's listening. Just but it's just kind of one of those things that like I'll pick a card that isn't too expensive, but I think is something that like could see commander play or whatever, and then I just kind of hold on to those. So now that we've got that out of the way, one other thing that I wanted to touch on, um, make sure to use your judgment. You know, when listening to people on YouTube or podcasts or whatever, you know, it's important to take their information and, you know, apply proper reasoning to it.
And the only reason they're giving you advice is usually because they've already gone out and they're already first to market and gotten everything they needed. So they're passing along their quote unquote advice to you because they've already gotten everything that they need.
Yeah, so we're not saying to not listen to MTG Finance people, but it is important to kind of maybe think ahead or just, you know, invest in something that you like. And that's, you know, when you've played Magic for a while, I mean, like Matt's played a lot longer than I have, but when you kind of start seeing what decks are good, you can kind of uh, put some forethought into your Magic investments, and, you know, use your knowledge to make good projections on what you think would be good or what you think would be bad, and invest in that fashion.
Rule of thumb when it comes to finance and not just Magic the Gathering is when you see everybody running in one direction, don't run that way because you've already missed out on the ground floor. And if you're hopping in at mid tier or at market price, that means you're not going to be getting any value out of it.
And one last thing before we get into Merfolk specifically, that they say on Brainstorm Brewery is leave the next 10% to the other guy,
Yep.
because you know, if you hold on to something, you know, there's going to be a point where the card gets reprinted, or your stock tips, or the company goes under, or something like that. So like
My
don't always think that your stock is going to go up.
I held on to my damnation for way too long. I had a planar chaos damnation for since I cracked it from a pack, and I was 60 and it jumped to 80 at one point, and I was just about to sell it, and then it got reprinted on me, and then I lost like what $60 to $40 in value overnight.
Yeah, and so like maybe if I held on to all my Werv inventions, I might have made, you know, a couple more dollars on them each. But if you sell into a spike or sell into like hype for a deck, do it. Like, I mean, you know, that's part of the investing, is like, you know what? You're right. Somebody will probably get more for it than you did.
I
But
literally just sold every Snapcaster Mage I had.
yeah. So it's one of those things that, you know, it's something that you have to take in, you know, what risks you're willing to take.
Mhm.
So going into Merfolk Finance. So Matt, I have a couple lists. I have a couple decks here that are kind of predominant and modern. And I also have my deck list, which is kind of a stock Merfolk list. And
Mhm.
for all of you listening, I'm going to have this list in the show notes so you can kind of see. Mine is very kind of suited for an open meta. I haven't done a lot of changing to my list. With college and kids, it's kind of hard to get out and play as often as I'd like.
Well, and it's a pretty straightforward stock list. I don't think there's no much changing that needs to be done to it, to be honest,
Yeah, it's definitely good for an open
especially for a
list.
moto player.
I might add some Tidebinder mages because Jund is coming back a little bit,
Mhm.
but I'm kind of just waiting for Merfolk Trickster, I think. But
Sure.
so when I tallied up my list on MTG Goldfish using my list, um, it put it at $542. And when I
Yeah.
when I inputted the singles on TCG Player, it put it at $496.
Yeah, I mean, if you really start breaking it down, a lot of these it's play sets of the things we talked about before: Curse Catchers, Harbingers, Silvergill Adepts. I mean, we're talking like under $5 for the whole play set. Some of the more expensive play sets we're talking about here is Lord of Atlantis, which for the fifth edition printing, if you want to go with the cheapest, is about $5 a piece. You got your Phantasmal Images, which again is if the cheapest printing is about 7, and then your Aether Vials, which you can get for about $31 now. So, I mean, we're not talking crazy, crazy money, especially for Magic, modern Magic.
Yeah. So one other thing that I wanted to get on, we discussed briefly when we were talking about our intros to Magic Finance, is that kind of one of the good things about Merfolk is that it's so consistent. But one thing to be wary of when you're talking about reprints is that because of that consistency, most of the reprints that you're going to get from Merfolk are 4-ofs in the deck. So things like Aether Vial, things like Mutavaults, they're all cards that you have to consider that when they reprint cards, you're gonna need 4 of them. So if you're buying into Merfolk and you're waiting for reprints on things, that's definitely something to consider when speculating or hoping for reprints for the deck.
Lord of Atlantis has been printed 10 times, and he'll probably be printed more than that.
Well, we're gonna go into more of the more expensive cards, that are often used, and in one case, semi or seldom used cards. But Matt, can you go over some of the prices of some other decks? Like I said, this deck runs around $500 and can actually be had for much less if you cut Cavern of Souls, which we will discuss. But can you
Yeah.
go over just some of the other decks in Modern right now?
Yeah. So, a deck that we both like talking about is Humans. Humans right now on MTG Goldfish is $1,377, or about 2.5 Merfolk decks. Jund is $2,232, which is just under 6 Merfolk decks. You have Grixis Death Shadow, $1,327. Again, just under 3 Merfolk decks. And then some of the cheaper ones, Burn right now is $6.99, but Burn is boring, so don't play it. Plus, it's more expensive than Merfolk. Living End is 802. It's a glass cannon. Why waste your money? Play Merfolk. It's cheaper. Hollow One is between 886 and 1,000. That deck is really, really good. So you can play Hollow One if you want. And then Bogles is 780. And Bogles in the meta right now is really good, but I'm not a big fan. It comes and goes, but when it leaves for a really long time. And then Tron, we'll talk Tron. And we talked before when we did the Tron podcast. There's a million different versions. So I'm playing Green Black Tron right now, and the Green Black Tron list that I'm playing at the moment is about $897.
Yeah, and we just hit some of the major hitters in Modern. We're not trying to like do a broad sweep of Modern finance, but we just wanted to put it into context, like what Merfolk cost versus other decks in the format cost, according to mtggoldfish.com.
So, and one thing you have to realize is when you're building a deck, unless you're Mr. Moneybags, you're most likely going to piece it together slowly. You're going to go out and you're going to spend $20 here, $7 here, maybe 30 or so here, and you slowly piece it together, which is perfectly fine. It's usually how I build most of my decks. And with Merfolk, you can actually do that, and you can, after a while, have a stocked Merfolk deck ready to play and ready to compete with. But the level of entry for something like Jund, you're paying $80 a piece for Goyce. For Tron, you're paying $90 a piece for Karns. For all the new blue decks, you're paying minimum $90 a piece for Jaces, which makes the entry point very, very difficult. And we're not even talking about fetches at this point.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I did was, I mean, I bought foils, which we'll discuss later on, but at the same time, I bought them in pieces. So I bought like all of my curse catchers, and I bought, and so it was much more manageable chunks rather
Mhm.
than, like you said, having to pay $90 a piece for my Karns, or in the case of Jund, buying Lilianas. That's a
At
huge
130
investment.
right now.
Yeah, 130 a piece, and that deck runs four.
Yeah.
That's insane. Like I don't think I spent that much in one sitting for all of my any part of my Merfolk deck. Um
Do you want to buy 4 lilies or the entire Merfolk deck?
yeah, yeah, that's actually a really good way to put it. So also one thing that we also wanted to hit was that Merfolk has been the beneficiary of several recent reprints. Some of them a little bit have worked out a little bit better than others in in the case of modern Merfolk. Um, Probably one of the highlights is Silvergill Adept. Um, at its highest, it was around $5, and it's still the Lorwyn version's around 250, but the market price for the Rivals edition 36 cents.
Yeah.
So you can have a playset for under $2. That's pretty darn good.
So it goes from a $20 playset to, yeah, like a buck 25 playset.
Yeah, and like I said, it might not seem like a whole lot. Like, oh, we're talking about a 250 card instead of like Liliana, which, like you said, is really up there. But we're talking about like an entry level Merfolk deck,
Mhm.
and a deck that can hold its own. Maybe not tier one, but it definitely it peeks its head up every once in a while and is at least tier two.
Or if you just want to build a secondary deck and you don't want to spend too much money on it, like let's say you spent a lot of money on the humans deck, but you kind of get bored with it and you want to just have something secondarily on the back in your back pocket, you can just build Merfolk fairly quickly.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Again, some more reprints. Curse Catcher, which was only printed in Lorwyn up until Masters 25, was at its highest at $15 around Battle for Zendikar Oath of the Gatewatch, at $15. Its current market price is around $8, but you can get the Modern Masters 25 edition for about 260, 250. So there's another way to shave off a lot of cash. Um, Aether Vial has had several reprints, and we're going to talk about Aether Vial and Chalice of the Void pretty similarly because they're both cards that have had a lot of reprints,
Mhm.
and as well as both having a masterpiece print. But they've kind of maintained their high price. Aether Vial was at its highest at $42, right after Hour of Devastation. Um, it's had From the Vault at 40, Modern Masters at $34, Dark Steel version was 32. Currently, you can get your Iconic Masters at around $31. But that's something that I would definitely get into relatively soon, because iconic masters is starting to get opened less and less. It's just it's That's definitely something you want to get into as the beneficiary of a recent reprint.
Yeah, and I don't know how much we're going to talk about this today, but we're probably at max low price of that card. Usually, what happens is big box openers, they hold on to their stock until the next set comes out. Then they need to liquidate their assets to be able to have capital to buy into the next set when the hype is there. So they're liquidating right now. So once all that's back out into the market and people are holding on to it, the price is going to start going up.
Yeah, I totally agree. And
So we're at bare bottom price on that card right now. So now's the time to buy that
and
if you want them.
yeah, and the again, they also had another recent reprint, inventions for Kaladesh, and that one is currently sitting at around $200. So that is like the peak bling, but it is definitely the version that will not depreciate.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit of bling. But since Cody brought it up, yeah, if you want to get a card that's never going to depreciate in value and only go up, then just buy the masterpiece. But again, you have to have $200 to do it. It's not like you can piece it out, unless you're just putting away $20 a month to do it. But If you're doing it that way, most likely the price is going to keep going up and up on you, so you're never going to hit it.
And again, like I said, with the modern problem is that it's a four of.
Mm-hmm.
Again, with Chalice of the Void, it's very similar. The current price for the Mirrodin version is $61. Its historic high was just before Hour of Devastation, and that was at $90. But you can get it for $59 for the Masters 25 reprint. And honestly, I think that has a little bit more room to go down a little bit before it starts going up, but not by a whole lot.
I agree. So when the reprint first came out, I thought that it was going to drop to about the 35-40 range, was kind of where I was looking to buy personally. But Masters 25 was such a disaster. No one's opening boxes. So they're just this volume isn't out there like we expected it to be. So I think you're right, Cody. I think it's going to go down a little bit more, but I think 45-50 is probably about as low as you're going to get.
Yeah, and this also has a masterpiece printing, which is sitting around 175. Now,
Which is a steal, which is an absolute steal, because that's going to be a $300-400 card, not the too distant future.
and this is something that's used in the sideboard of modern Merfolk. Maybe one day could be in the main board, but currently it's generally a sideboard card and maybe 1 to 2s, but definitely not a full 4 of.
But it's played in like 30 to 40% of all legacy decks.
Now, there's 2 other recent reprints that we want to talk about. Mutavault. Now, currently, if you want to pick up a Mutavault, the cheapest way to do it is to get the M14 version, which is sitting around $14. The foil M14 are around 22, and they have a GP promo that's currently sitting at about $19. Now, this is a GP promo, so I would say probably waiting until if you can hold off, if you want to bling out your deck, waiting until closer to the end of the year when they'll be at peak supply is probably the best bet. But they probably will get down to, I don't know, Matt, would you say like $15 is probably the lowest they'll go?
Yeah, even 15 is probably pushing it because the demand for that card is still pretty high.
Yeah, no, and that's why I was saying, like, if you can find them for 15, then that's a steal. But like, I bought mine in January at $20 a piece, which is totally reasonable.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. I mean, Gristlebrand, when he was a GP promo, he was a $20 card and he's now at like 5 to 8, something like that. So maybe closer to 10, but I would be very shocked. 15 sounds about right to me.
Yeah, and so the last one that we want to talk about is Cavern of Souls, and this one has been the unfortunate on the receiving end of a recent reprint and also a recent spike in demand for modern.
And one thing before we go too far into Cavern of Souls, we've talked about this in the past, is that Cavern of Souls isn't a deal breaker in this deck, especially in modern. So don't think you have to have a Cavern of Souls to play modern Merfolk by any means.
Yeah, that is definitely a great disclaimer because control decks that use a lot of counterspells are not super prevalent.
And also don't counter creatures. It's like counter target non-creature spell.
And the other thing is, if you're investing in Aether Vials, that's your way to get things past counterspells.
Yep.
So that's Cavern of Souls is not a deal breaker. Don't worry about it if you can't get these.
Unless you want to play green-blue, then you kind of need them a little bit more for mana fixing. But the mono-blue version, which I think Kody and I both said we think is better, so...
Yeah, currently in my blue-green list, I do run 3 Cavern of Souls, but I do agree you don't need 4. You know, if you have 1 or 2, like Jay in her deck, she only had 1, and we recommended, don't even bother about getting that second one unless you're playing on the Pro Tour, and you need that extra 5%. Don't worry about it. It's not a deal breaker to not have these. And we actually had a question on Facebook from Chris V. He was talking about, should we get these without going broke? Should we invest in these before, if they're going to go up or go down? Like I said, don't worry about these.
So the answer to that question, which I thought about a little bit this afternoon, was you've already missed the market. The time to buy Cavern of Souls is when they drop to about 45.50 after the Modern Masters 15 reprint. They rebounded very quickly, as most cards did in Modern Masters 15, because the set was amazing. So we're now at a new high, and it could potentially even go higher because it's played in a lot of legacy decks and it's played in a lot of modern decks and it's played in Commander. Um, so at this point, if you want to play Merfolk, my suggestion is don't buy them. If you have the money and you just want to spend it, then go for it. I mean, I'm not gonna tell you to spend your cash, but if you're budget conscious and this is what's holding you back, don't worry about it because Wizards is going to reprint this card and probably a couple times because Wizards has kind of held a precedent more recently that they don't want cards over $100 or even really over 80, 90, especially cards that are very much in decks that make it easier for people to get into, such as a lot of tribal decks, which Cavern of Souls is said tribal card. So I think we're going to see it reprinted very soon. And when I say very soon, I mean within the next 2 to 5 years, and that's fairly soon in Magic time.
Yeah, and maybe a reprinting not at Mythic would help that. But so currently on MTG stocks, we're looking at the Modern Masters printing at around the Avacyn Restored is around $89. And looks like you can pick up the new one at around $83. So we already hit that at these prices. You really, in Modern currently, you don't need these to be a competent Modern player at your FNM. I would recommend, however, picking up Minamo at School's Water's Edge or Oboro Palace in the Clouds if you want some more non-basic land options for blue, because those are non-blue sources that come into play tapped that are much, much less than Cavern of Souls.
Sure, and if you really want to go budget, you can even go Field of Ruin.
Yeah, and like we've said, there's nothing wrong with going to cheaper versions. It looks like Minamo's at around $27, and I'm gonna pull up Oboro here. But like I said, even those aren't super necessary. You could play this with all islands and reduce the cost by a whole lot. So to those questions of like when should we get Cavern, now's not the time. Don't buy Caverns now. Looks like Oboro's right around $20, $19.90, $20. Yeah. So those are cheaper options if you're looking to diversify your land base, but not go super crazy like spending $80 a piece on Caverns.
Yeah, like I said, if you want the cheap Cavern, you've missed the boat. But hold out; it will be reprinted. I mean, it's a card that can realistically get reprinted in like core set and not break a standard set. So I mean, that wouldn't shock me in the least. And that's now that core is coming back, that's kind of a fun practice for if you want to kind of start specking on things. Is think about kind of more high end cards that can be reprinted into a standard environment that won't break the format, but will actually help MTG Finance become cheaper.
And the last question that we got asked that we really want to hit on, and again, we're gonna hit an episode where we talk about legacy and about more high end stuff like foils or promos. So if you asked a question about those, don't feel bad. We are going to get to your questions.
Yeah, so the premium cards are the one thing that we really wanted to hit on, and we realized that we had because both Kody and I love foils, we love promos, we love alters. We wanted to have a whole episode devoted to that. So we're going to get to that probably in the next couple weeks.
Yeah. So the last question that we want to hit was a question that Ryan had on Facebook, and he said he wanted to discuss. Well, I guess he has two. So just off the top of your head, Matt, what do you think the buy-in price for foil Merfolk Tricksters will be at?
The buy-in price will probably. I'm sure the prices are actually already out there, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head. I would guess around between $10 initially. Uh, it'll probably dip once for quite a while. Because I think Dominaria is going to be opened up a lot. I would probably be a buyer at 4 to 5
For foils.
for foils. Yeah,
So
it's an
I
uncommon.
think based off, because I've actually bought foils of Kumena Speaker and Merfolk Branchwalker. So based off of those, which were around in the $10 to $15 range, what I think they're gonna do is they're gonna pre-order it around $15 to $20.
Okay, I buy that.
I think.
I forgot that standard Merfolk is kind of a thing right now.
And with Merfolk Trickster, a lot of people are excited about it, so that's something that could drive that pre-order price. But I think it will go down to around $10 to $15. So I'm a little bit higher on it than you are, or a little more expensive than you are. But I think that's probably where it'll be.
My big thought process on it is I really think there's going to be a lot of Dominaria opened and very quickly.
I do agree about that.
So there's just gonna be more copies of it out there because I mean it's a standard playable set. So Wizards are gonna keep printing as long as people are buying it.
Yeah. So and like you said, we're gonna talk about more about foils in our next finance podcast episode. But from now on, or for today, the only other thing that I wanted to briefly discuss at a very minimal pace or minimal length was the Merfolk versus Goblins dual deck, which did reprint a lot of stuff that is in modern Merfolk. It's not nothing, or it's not a lot, but it's definitely not nothing. It's something to consider when buying stuff. It's something that has a lot of the parts of modern Merfolk.
Yeah, I mean it's and for was it $20? I mean it doesn't hurt. And as I've always said is I like the dual decks. I just watched. I know they're discontinuing them, and I just watched the professor at Tellurian Community College his last review on them, and he said it went out with a whimper. And I understand what he's talking about, but I mean they are just fun just to pop open and play with somebody who's not a big MTG guy, and it's fair and it's fun.
Yeah, and actually, I bought it at Target, and Jessica agreed to play it with me. So this is a legally binding thing now that it's on the podcast that you have to. I've got a thing. We're gonna record it. It's gonna be great. And but my wife Jessica does want to play the Merfolk, so I have to play Goblins, unfortunately. But that's totally fine. We'll have that gameplay on our YouTube channel. Which is a place you can find all of our content, like our podcast episodes. Other places you can find us are on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as @FishcastMTG. Personally, I'm on Twitter as @NotCodySmith. And Matt, where are you at on Twitter?
I'm Matthew Caudil8, and I'm usually on there trolling Kody and the MTG Fishcast tweets.
That is definitely true. You get me every time that you can. If you have a longer form question or want to discuss anything at length, you can contact us at fishcastmtg@gmail.com. Again, we're also on patreon.com as patreon.com/fishcastmtg. You can help us support us there. We're working on getting to $150 so we can revamp our whole look, our logos, and our layouts for our videos and all that. So believe me, every dollar that you put into the show is going into the show. We're not taking personal gains off of this. We just want this to.
I am.
Yeah, Matt's wife is. She after we do everything for the show, then she'll get her fridge. That'll be the.
When she gets her fridge, I'm getting my diamond crusted grill, so I can look like Paul Wall.
Oh, okay.
But in all seriousness though, if you want to make me and Kody your dancing monkeys and run the show and tell us what to do, yeah, hop on that $10 one.
Yeah, you can be on the show, and we can run this show into the ground for your $10.
Yeah, for your entertainment.
And if you can't support us monetarily, we totally understand how life is. But we would ask that you tell a friend. Tell a friend about our podcast. You all have a Merfolk player at your LGS. Or another Merfolk player that you're always talking to. Tell them about the show, or rate us on the Apple Podcast store, or wherever you find your podcast, on iHeartRadio or Stitcher Radio or the Google Play Store. or on YouTube. Give us likes and follows.
On RedTube, Pornhub, Spankwire, we're on those channels as well.
We are definitely not on those. Not by my knowledge, as far as I know.
That's where I've been loading our videos.
Oh, well, I think we're gonna get very short views on RedTube and all that. But
You'd be very surprised. People learn to fish stuff.
Our current our cover art and everything was made by Tessa and Hunter Pruitt. Thank you very much for your generosity and providing us with some really cool cover art. If you look really closely, there's Merfolk cards floating in the water, and you're fishing for them. It's very thematic. I really like it. And thank you very much for listening. We appreciate you guys engaging us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. It's so cool. Keep talking to us. We like it.
Yes, it makes my lunch break very, very enjoyable. So thanks, guys.
And that about does it for this week. Again, we'll talk more about MTG Finance later on. And
yes, we know we didn't get to all your questions. Again, we're saving the premium stuff, so we have it all written down. We will get to it, I promise.
Yep, we'll get to it, and we will see you all next week.
Have a good week, guys.